top 5 fits for Dante Moore, last year's number 1 or 2 quarterback in the portal. He's a 5-star guy. He played a little bit at UCLA and looked, like he kind of looked like a 5-star freshman, where he had moments where it's like, holy cow, this guy is good, and then some days a 5-star, some days a freshman, turned the ball over a little bit too much, but he's in the portal and has plenty of interest. So the top 5 fits for Dante Moore. Number 5, Miami. Mario Cristobal needs to hit on a quarterback in the worst way, and Dante Moore going down there would bring some of that juice back to Coral Gables, and the U that they've been missing at that position for a very, very long time. And he's someone that they would have for 2 years, so they could build around and behind him. But I do think that when you start to get in some of these other teams involved that are maybe a little bit better, it might be a little bit tough. But if Miami is really serious and Mario Cristobal is really serious, this is something, and I do believe he is supposed to visit there. I know that they've got Cam Ward in for a visit tomorrow, so we'll see how this goes down. But this is absolutely a guy they need to look at.
Yeah, I'd rather have Cam Ward
10
times out of 10. So we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, you'd have the benefit with Dante Moore of having a couple years, but give me Cam Ward and let me sort out the rest of it on the other side of it. But yeah, certainly they're in the market. If they were to swing and miss on Ward, then I think that Moore just gets that much.
I think Ward has a couple of visits after that he's taken.
So, there's definitely going to be – it's like, you don't know – it's like Baylor Blake Shape. You didn't know if he's going to the portal or not, but you're still searching out for guys regardless. So, I'm sure Miami's checking all the boxes and not just putting all their eggs in one basket. But, Moore would make sense for a team that obviously needs a quarterback. The Tyler Van Dyke situation last year did not work out. I think, anybody really expected it to. I know Miami's got some young guys, but they could certainly use a sure thing, and Cam Ward would provide that. Dante Moore, not a sure thing. That's the thing about him. He's very talented, but it's not like, Kyle McCord even, who's jumping. He doesn't have that kind of experience. It was very hit or miss for him this past year. And mostly miss in the long run. But, the Hurricanes need a quarterback.
Number 4, Washington. Have some maybe more veteran guys on the back end of that roster, but nobody with a lot of experience. Dylan Morris, who was their starter a couple years ago in the pre-Michael Penix Jr. days, he's in the portal and probably wasn't going to get that starting job anyway. This would allow him to stay on the West Coast and actually, the next 4 teams on this list are all Big Ten teams now, with Washington heading there next year. But this one with Kalen DeBoer would seem to make a lot of sense. And Kalen DeBoer is a guy that I think a lot of people are going to want to play for because he is a stud coach and is going to start just, I think, pouring out NFL talent there. So I think this would be a good fit because you can step into an offense that operates pretty well there at UW.
Yeah, losing Michael Penix is an absolutely massive loss. It's going to be really hard to replace him no matter what you're able to go out there and get in the transfer portal. I know that they've got some young talent that they're excited about there in Washington and Austin Mack, but you just lost your veteran backup who could have come back for a 6th year, and Dylan Morris. He entered the transfer portal, so if there was a little bit of a stopgap to be had there, that's now gone, but I don't know that you really want to throw the young guy to the Wolves just yet, so it would make a lot of sense for them to go ahead and get somebody else in the transfer portal, and I'd imagine that they will. And so Dante Moore doesn't check the box necessarily of a veteran kind of stopgap type of a guy, but he does have some experience at this point, and he's a talented dude, and with what Kalen DeBoer did with Michael Penix, I'm sure he's going to have a lot of quarterbacks salivating at the opportunity to go and play for him.
Number 3, Michigan State. I don't think this one is likely because I think that they're probably knocking on the door of Aiden Childs, who was Oregon State big recruit last year, and will probably follow Jonathan Smith there. But he's from Detroit. Jonathan Smith is a really good quarterback coach, so this would make a ton of sense, although I do think there's 2 other schools in the Midwest that are probably a little hotter and heavier on them because of Michigan State being interested in Aiden Childs. But again, until somebody says, I'm coming to Michigan State, everybody's got to be in the water. For Jonathan Smith, who all 3 quarterbacks on the Michigan State roster are in the portal, I don't think Jonathan Smith is worried about that, but it is the first thing he's got to do to make sure that Michigan State can start spring practice even. So he's got to do that, and I'm sure he'll get maybe another freshman as well in there. But there are things to do at Michigan State, and you got to kick the tires on everybody. And again, this is a Detroit guy, so getting him in there could be really intriguing.
Yeah, like you said, it's an empty cupboard basically right now. So, yeah, you got to add as many ingredients as possible in time for spring. So, yeah, he'd make a lot of sense. I don't know how much locale always matters, but it could very much for a Michigan kid, could matter a lot, a great deal to go back to your home state and play for Sparty. So, yeah, that's definitely a place that I think for all quarterbacks that are available to keep an eye on. But Aiden Childs, there does seem to be a good bit of smoke here in the last few days. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on. But, yeah, they're not going to stop at just one guy, so that'll be very interesting to see how they manage that.
Number 2, Ohio State. Look, you don't, push a quarterback into the portal without having a plan, which they clearly think they're going to get somebody. And they're Ohio State. They're not going to not get a portal quarterback. And he's one of the ones I would think that you would go out and get. Like, this is one of the ones you think you can. And again, obviously they're not in Michigan, they're in Ohio, but they are the Ohio State University, and they can get pretty much the people that they want. So I would not be surprised if this was the guy that maybe Ryan Day had his eye on the entire time, and seeing as he's in the portal. Now, there could be other people who could wind up at Ohio State. There's lots of different guys in the portal, but this one, to me, would be the one I would think he might have zeroed in on.
I mean, there is, Paul, but it's getting lesser by the day.
Exactly.
I mean, there's not that many quarterbacks left at this point. I mean, there's a few, but with each passing day, there's less and less to choose from. Yeah, I mean, maybe that was the grand plan, is that you've got Dante Moore. I don't know, though, if I'm an Ohio State fan, if I watched UCLA this year, that I'm all that excited about that being my grand plan and replacing Kyle McCord, who just had a pretty good year for you. So I'm fascinated to learn whatever it is that's up the Buckeyes' sleeve and what that plan was all along, because I still find it kind of strange that McCord left. I mean, the dude was just your starter this past year and has plenty of eligibility left. And, I don't know. I'm interested to hear more on kind of how all that played out, and very intrigued to see who that guy's going to be to replace him, because that's an interesting move, and you would have thought that there's sort of a bullet already in the chamber, cocked and ready to go, and yet here we are, and we still haven't heard anything. So
yeah, I kind of fully expected to hear like Kyle McCord is in the portal 2 days later. Then like, oh, this guy's going there,
right? And
that hasn't happened yet. It's been a week. So
and Dante Moore, for as big of a recruit as he was, that's not one where I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. I'd still be kind of like, what?
They have Devin Brown in the depth chart. It was a highly ranked player too. He didn't play much this year because McCord did, because he got beat out. But Raiola at one point was an Ohio State commit. So I bring that up only because we brought him up earlier. Now that it appears obviously he's committed to Georgia, but that could be changing too.
Well, look, they've also, Brock Glenn, who started the game at Florida State, he was an Ohio State commit. So Ryan Day and Brian Hartline, who have had like a nice little pipeline, have maybe lost a little bit of their grip on that lately. So it's just the Ohio State situation is odd, because I would have thought the plan is like, okay, he's 11-1. Let's see how much better we can make him. Maybe Devin Brown gets better and passes him, and you get somebody else. But him being out there without a plan B is really strange.
Yeah, and Devin Brown doesn't exactly inspire a ton of confidence either, based on what you've seen so far. So yeah, I mean, there's young guys that maybe they pan out, with the right situation. But yeah, it's a puzzle right now in Columbus, and I think we're all just waiting on some big shoe to drop. Yeah. But and is there one?
McCord didn't put up huge numbers, but he was 24 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. So he was 4-1.
He was their best option.
Yeah, and so that was like, he was efficient, and he'll be efficient where he goes. He's just not going to be. I think part of it is also he's a hot chick, but he's not CJ Stroud hot chick, right? Like he's not Heidi Klum. He's just
I thought he played against Michigan very, very well, too.
Until he threw the 2 picks.
But you lose to Michigan like a coach, like Ryan Day.
But that's, you say that. It's not just like, oh, yeah, but it happens. No, it doesn't. Yeah. No, it's not supposed to. And so you've done it twice in a row now, and so nobody's going to want to hear.
3 times.
3 in a row?
Yeah.
Oh, God. See, I'm already sliding them.
Yeah.
So 3 times.
3 straight for Ryan Day.
It doesn't matter if you played pretty good. They need great. They need better than that. And so, that's a very interesting situation.
Number 1, Michigan, look, they don't have a quarterback in the barrel next year either. And their offense might be a little bit more easy to transition into without the constant expectation on the big play. And again, Detroit guy. So I expect all three of those Big Ten Midwestern big boys to be in the mix for Dante Moore. And look, Jim Harbaugh's just getting the extension. Everything's fine in Ann Arbor. Nothing bad happened, and nothing bad's ever going to happen, and nothing bad will happen, and nothing untoward ever happened. That's how you have to approach it with Jim Harbaugh, I guess. But Dante Moore to Michigan, to me, would make also a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, J.J. McCarthy had an okay year. Obviously, they just were built really well as a team. I've been reading a little bit about McCarthy and like his pro prospects and things like that. I mean, he could come back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always the opportunity for him to come back if he's not hearing the right things from the NFL. So that would help solve matters pretty easily. And you also have a 5-star quarterback coming in Jaden Davis for the class of 2024. So if you could get McCarthy back and then Jaden Davis, and that's just like scraping their depth chart, then I think you'd be okay. But, yeah, certainly you're always going to have your head on a swivel. If McCarthy goes to the pros, you're going to be even more need. And, that would seem an ideal destination, especially with Harbaugh there as your coach for any quarterback to work with. So, the Wolverines and Ohio State both potentially in the running here for Dante Moore.
It's funny to